Back to Malawi now, where President Peter Mutharika has accused the opposition of wanting to overthrow the government by force. The opposition has rejected the outcome of last month's election. Backers of the Malawi Congress Party allege their leader, Lazarus Chakwera, was robbed of victory in the May 21st election. The official count showed that he lost by just 159,000 votes. To talk more on this, we are joined in studio by Dr Michael Jana, political studies lecturer at Wits University. Dr Jana, good evening and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening.
Now, President Mutharika talking of the opposition wanting to take power by force.
Yeah, that is very interesting. I guess it's just politics talk. But we all know the issues, that the Malawi Congress Party and the other opposition parties are not satisfied with the results of the elections. So they are using different tactics to express their dissatisfaction, and one of which is they've gone to court, and they're also using their supporters to demonstrate against the result. So that's the reality.
In going to court,
yeah.
They went to court just immediately after elections. There was a slight delay in the announcement being made, and the announcement finally was made. President Mutharika literally within a couple of hours was inaugurated. Everything happened so quickly. Why the delay? Why take so much time to actually make their voices heard? Because I remember I had a discussion with another analyst who spoke of the fact that Chakwera is actually quiet. He's not saying anything. Seemingly he's not reacting to the results and to the High Court decision.
I think, in my opinion, all this speaks to how sort of defective the electoral system in Malawi is. Because, as you have rightly put it, I mean, for your information, there was a proposal to sort of amend the rules regarding when the president should take over after the election results are announced. They proposed that they should wait for 30 days, and that was to give space for all these issues to be settled amicably before the president is sworn in. But those proposals were rejected in parliament. So you can actually see that the whole setup, the whole electoral setup in Malawi actually sets the whole situation towards trouble, because then people will be protesting and someone wants to be sworn in. I think it's basically the whole institutional setup that's not okay.
Now let's go to the electoral system that is used in Malawi, the first past the post system, where the one who has the highest number of votes is declared the winner of the elections. The system, do you think it's free and fair? Do you think that they need to relook at the electoral system in Malawi?
Yeah, I mean, of course, when they were designing that electoral system, the rationale was that it's one of the simplest electoral systems. You know, it's cost effective and you know, things of that sort. But I mean, 25 years into democracy, I think now Malawians have actually seen that this system is not ideal for Malawi, because already, if you follow Malawi politics, you actually see that in many elections we've had in the past, the president that we're having has been winning with very minimum minority, like the current president, 38%. Last in 2014, he won by 36%, meaning to say the majority did not vote for him. You know, he's just first amongst the rest. So this system, I think, is not ideal for Malawi democracy, in my opinion, and there was a need to change it. And for information, there were also reforms proposals to actually adopt the 50% plus one, so that at least the president should have at least 50%, more than 50% of the votes. But it was rejected. Interestingly, it was rejected by both the opposition and the ruling party. You know, so you can actually see that this is all recipe for trouble.
So basically, it's working against them as well as the opposition, and now reality seems to have kicked in.
Now reality has kicked in, and I think by now they should be blaming themselves. The opposition should actually blame themselves, because most opposition MPs voted against the proposal of changing the electoral system. So now they are now crying foul. So I think it's high time they go back to the drawing board and relook at the electoral system.
Now, what has been seen unfolding in Malawi is seemingly a very all-too-familiar picture on the African continent, with a lot of, presidents being elected and the opposition crying foul, and there's protest action, then leading to violence, and, people lose their lives. How do we work around the issues on the African continent and ensuring that African leaders understand that being a president doesn't mean that you're president for life?
Yeah, I think election, in my opinion, elections has got so many phases, and there's the pre-election era, then there's the election phase, and there's the post-election phase. So in my opinion, I think we need to work at all these three phases. For the pre-election phase, that's where we're talking about the rules of the game. What are the institutions that are in place? And that's where we're talking about the electoral system. What electoral system have we adopted? Is it ideal for our society? I mean, in Malawian case, we have seen that I think the first past the post is not ideal. We need to relook at the electoral laws, including how do we hand over power? Should we first maybe give space so that if there are all disputes, they are resolved, then after a while, then a president is sworn in. You know, in Malawi, I've actually seen that I think that's a necessity.
This is the case. In Malawi, that 30-day period would have been a cooling off period, and for everyone to sort of, you know, get to grips with what the results are.
Exactly.
And now with Chakwera's case, it's seemingly reality kicking in. The president has already been sworn in.
Yes.
And I remember we had a discussion a few weeks ago about how quickly the inauguration took place. It's literally they were ready to take over. It's
like they know that there's trouble, so let's just rush and let's swear him in so that he's now the president. You know, it's now difficult to remove him. So I think we need to look at these rules and regulations, including even now when you're talking about during the voting era, the capacity and the integrity of the polling staff, and also the integrity of the whole system, how transparent it is. We've actually seen that in many countries, not only in Malawi. We've seen it in Zimbabwe. There are always allegations of rigging on both sides, actually. So it means that even our systems, they're not tight enough to exclude all these anomalies. Now,
going to the courts at this point in time, is there even a possibility of these elections being, you know, sort of, or the courts make a decision with regards to going back to the electoral process or the voting, you know, starting the process all over again? Do you think it's even a possibility?
Technically, it is possible. Technically. But if the courts rule that indeed the opposition have a credible case and they nullify the results, that would be unprecedented. It has never happened in Malawi, and that would be unprecedented, I should say. But technically, yes, the courts have got those powers to nullify the results if there's proper evidence.
Does the opposition really have a case? Have the allegations of vote rigging been, you know, verified? Has it been confirmed that there has been vote rigging that has taken place, and thus there's no speculation for the opposition to approach the courts, where the courts would then come back with a decision to say, but wait a minute, where's the evidence?
Well, the opposition are claiming that they have got evidence. They are claiming that they've got evidence of pre-marked electoral ballot papers that were stashed in ballot boxes. They are claiming they have got evidence, and this one was in the open about using this correction fluid to change the numbers on ballot forms. I remember
that one very well. Yes, so we call it Tipex.
Tipex, here we go. So they are claiming they've got all sorts of evidence, but maybe the issue is how big or how significant is this evidence, or to what extent would this have changed the result? Maybe, I guess those are the big questions that need to be asked, because I mean, there is no perfect election. Let me put it this way: there's no perfect election anywhere, but the issue is, what's the significance? What's the error margin? How big is it? Would it have changed the result? To me, those are the big questions. So we don't know. They are claiming they've got that evidence, but obviously, I mean, there were a lot of irregularities. For sure. Speaking
of that particular irregularity with the correction fluid, that was presented to the court initially in the first when they first approached the court, and it was dismissed by the electoral office and the officials, saying that you know, they don't understand why it was used by their officials, but anyways, moving forward, the inauguration is still taking place.
Yeah, I mean, I guess these are the issues that we are just waiting for the courts, because I guess now they'll be unpacked and people will know the truth of what really happened. The Electoral Commission is claiming that it received about 147 complaints, and all these complaints were dealt with. That's what the Electoral Commission is saying, whereas the opposition parties are saying that the complaints were not dealt with. So that's why the issues are now in court. So we are yet to see how the courts are going to handle this, and what will be the weight of evidence, and whether it can change the result or lead to nullification of the results.
Now, speaking of President Peter Mutharika and how he's won his election, the campaign speaking about how he's going to deal with corruption and how he's going to develop and grow the economy of Malawi and change it from being a donor-dependent country to a profit-making country. Those plans, how is he planning to do that practically? Because, during campaign trail, a lot is said, a lot of promises are made. Do you think that he's going to be able to deliver on those promises made after already having a term in office?
Yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of promises that have been made by Mutharika, the president, and also even the opposition parties. And I guess for us to properly evaluate these promises is maybe to look back and see what has he done for the past 5 years. I mean, on the corruption front, in my opinion, there is a huge problem there, because, I mean, during his reign, I mean, for the past 5 years, there have been a lot of allegations of corruption, some even implicating him. For instance, there was a case where some business people were depositing money in a ruling party account where he's the sole signatory, and then he has to return the money. There are those scandals where the ruling party is even implicated, and then people are questioning to what extent is the fight for, against corruption genuine in as far as the ruling party is concerned. So there are a lot of skeptics. And on the developmental side of it, well, he can only do so much, I guess. There have been reports that at least infrastructure, roads. I mean, the ruling party has been building roads, but regarding whether it will lead to the extent to which they're promising people that it will be like Europe, people are also skeptical. I mean, looking just backwards to say, I mean, for the past 5 years they've been in power, what have they done? So they have got the potential to develop the country, yes, but corruption is one of the biggest dents in all these efforts.
Now, looking at corruption being a huge dent, the people of Malawi still voted Peter Mutharika into power and his party. How does that work? Where is the logic in that? Seemingly, the Malawians are comfortable with the corruption being a norm. It's being a part of their daily lives, and they now seemingly are used to it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, there is no perfect leader. Let's put it that way. And the biggest choice to a voter is who is the better evil, if you know what I mean. So more often than not, people look at the candidates and then they'll make a choice based on the merits and demerits. So yes, much as I'm saying that the ruling party or Mutharika has been even implicated in some of these corruption scandals, then people evaluate what has he done, in terms of education, the health system, the infrastructure. Then some people make a choice to say, maybe let's vote for him. But having said that, again, we should not rule out the electoral system itself, how it's set up. Because the way the electoral system is set up, maybe the question could be, if we had 50% +1 voting system, would Mutharika be president today? That's a question we don't know the answer. Some people would say no, because if he has won maybe with 38% and then they had to go for another round, two would have competed. Would he have won? We don't know. So there are a lot of, there's the institutional setup, and there's also like choice, the choice made by the voters, where they weigh the pros and cons. There are those negatives, the corruption, but there are other positives like the infrastructure. Then they make a choice and just vote for the incumbent.
Lazarus Chakwera, a very strong opponent for President Peter Mutharika and his party. In terms of what he was bringing to the table, in terms of his campaign trail, do you think that if these elections were to be nullified, he would be able to eventually take over Malawi as president?
Well, we don't know.
Hypothetically.
Yeah, I would say we don't know. And let me put it this way. I mean, I'm not surprised that Mutharika is present today, because even before the elections, there have been some polls that were conducted in Malawi, and all the predictions were showing that actually the DPP was in the lead, of course, with a very small margin. So, I mean, it's not surprising that Mutharika is in power. Let me be honest, and then it doesn't mean that if the votes will be nullified today, the results will be nullified today, then we hold the elections, then it's automatic that Chakwera will be president. I mean, that's not necessarily the case. I mean, voters have got their own choices. They can make their own choices, and we don't know.
What do you think that with President Mutharika going forward after this court case, the process, they go to the courts, what happens thereafter?
Here we are just waiting for the court's ruling. If the courts find that there is no credible evidence, then life goes on. Mutharika will continue being the president. If the courts find enough evidence and nullify the results, then what it means is technically Mutharika is no longer the president. So the courts will give direction. They may, for instance, say that they have to recount the votes, for instance. I mean, it will give a direction regarding where we go from here. But the bottom line is, if the results are nullified, it means then President Mutharika won't be the president. Technically, there have to be another process, as it were.
And how long would that process take? The recount and all of that?
We don't know how long that is going to take. That's why it will be unprecedented. It has never happened in Malawi, and we don't know, given all these logistical issues, we don't know how long that process can take.
When is the decision expected from the court?
Again, the court, it's hard to predict these court processes. We know at the moment that the opposition, United Transformation Movement, and the Malawi Congress Party both petitioned the courts, and then they have merged this and the issue is now in the Constitutional Court. But we don't know, because court processes can unfold in different ways. Yeah. So we are just waiting.
It's a wait
and see game.
All right. Dr. Jana, thank you so much for joining us in the
Thank
studio.
you.
That was Dr. Michael Jana, Political Studies lecturer at Wits University, joining us live in studio. That's it for now. We'll be back with more news at the top of the hour.